Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Waring. I'm a member of the Workshop of Poets. Your host for the evening. And it is a delight to be here as our hearts are somewhat broken with events in the world, and hopefully we can turn that around a bit with our poems and our prayers, a kind of evening of Vespers. So let us begin. We have a few quotes to start us off before introducing our two fabulous poets. Nikki Giovanni says, writers don't write from experience, although many are hesitant to admit that they don't. If you wrote from experience, you get maybe one book, maybe 3 poems. Writers write from empathy. James Hillman writes, without stories, there is no pattern, no understanding, no art, and no character, merely habits, events passing before the eyes of an aimless observer. A life unreviewed, a life lost in the living of it. And lastly, Arab-American poet Naomi Shihab Nye says, poetry calls us to pause. There is so much we overlook, while the abundance around us continues to shimmer on its own. Well, our first feature poet for tonight is Kevin Gallagher. He is a poet, publisher, and political economist. He lives in Belmont, Massachusetts with his wife, Kelly, kids Theo and Estelle, and Rex Roth, the family German Shepherd. His latest book is And Yet It Moves. He is the editor of Spoke, Boston-based annual of poetry and poetics. Kevin works as a political economist at Boston University. Please welcome Kevin.
Thanks so much, Richard. Can everyone hear me okay? I had a little trouble hearing you. I wasn't sure if it was your end or my end, but I'm getting thumbs up. Okay. Well, it's great to be here and great to read with Amy Alvarez. I'm very excited about it. I am going to read from my new book called And Yet It Moves, and I have some images that I'm going to go through as I read it. Want to make sure that folks can see this. We're better than looking up my nostrils. My mother was a chemistry teacher, and during COVID, she would tutor my 2 kids, but they learned more about the upper intricacies of our nostrils than they did about chemistry someday. But my book is called And Yet It Moves, and it is an act of empathy. It was great to hear some of these quotes that you have about empathy. It's a series of dramatic monologues set in the Renaissance Florence period, a period where God had his own bankers in the Medici family. And it's really a book to show that trading truth for power is not a new phenomenon, and selling out science for power is also not a new phenomenon. I know you're looking for Vespers, Richard, but this is a little bit of a sardonic commentary on the absence and the selling out of truth and science in today's world, as we just experienced the hottest September in the history of the world. So the Dark Ages were said to be broken by Petrarch. Actually, the poet Petrarch is really the time that he went on what's called the first ever hike just for pleasure. In 1336, he hiked to the top of Mount Vitu just to go for a hike, and saw an incredible view, and that's a turning point in history. The first poem is called Petrarch, Mount Vitu, 1336. How much conviction do we have to trample the appetite of earth between us. I was invisible, hidden in the darkness. I had no idea how hard it would be, but it doesn't matter with me now. I was moved to wander up the mountain, to see the vast swell of oceans, to smell the broad waterfalls diving into rivers, and to live through the revolution of firing stars. I made it to the mountaintop, and I will not stop there. Petrarch is seen as unleashing humanism because he saw these momentous things as through the eyes of a human, not necessarily through the veil of a god or any kind of magic. And at about 100 years later, the Medici family goes into power and really becomes the world's biggest first international bankers. And they set book hunters out throughout all the mosques and monasteries all over Europe to try to find lost discovered books from the Roman Empire, because these things were sequestered. They were banning them, basically, just like we are today in certain states. They didn't want anyone to read anything that didn't have Christianity at its core. And perhaps one of the greatest discoveries of all time, or rediscoveries, the way Columbus rediscovered our continent here, was the discovery of Lucretius's book on the nature of things. On the nature of things is a Roman epic. It's an epic poem, and really the first one that celebrates the human, the living sensation of thought and the body and the soul without any intervention by gods or by magic. This is a vision of Lucretius in an old book. And what I didn't realize is that the Birth of Venus, Botticelli's great painting, is literally a translation of one of the sonnets in the book, in the epic poem. And so I can't read Latin, so here's my translation of the painting. Rather than walk on water, you glide across a green jade sea, a figurehead painted on the bow of history that has finally come out of its shell. Wind and clouds are quiet in your presence. Zephyr and aura make love in midair. You cover yourself with your golden hair. You look right at me and right through me at the same time. The hour is quick to try to cloak you, but the wind and your aura blow it away. The ocean smooths your weary breasts as a quiet peace is restored upon the earth. For thee, the world perfumes of seasons. For thee, I paint light on the shining shore. The Medici, to their credit, poured what today would be the equivalent of billions of dollars into art, into great architecture. And Cosimo de' Medici is really considered one of the first one who really like made his first billions of what they would be translated into today. And this sculpture, which they commissioned, was super controversial. It's a David, not the big David that Michelangelo did. This one's by Donatello. And there is a rumor that Donatello was gay, and that perhaps this implied that, which was, if you think that's a scandal in some states in 2023, that was hardcore back in the 1500s. Cosimo de' Medici, I'll read two poems. I, Cosimo de' Medici, a cosmos, divine am I inside and out, and I make holy whatever I touch or am touched from. I know someone always wants to kill me, so I multiply my wealth and my might, without forgetting that I must be loved at home and across the world. If your family attempts to rival mine, I will see to it that you are taxed to death. Anything that I leave behind will remain here forever in sculpture. The people of Florence love me, as do dukes in London, Naples, and Cologne. But just in case, I sleep while heavily armed and switch bedchambers 3 times a night.
Mm.
You folks can see the big screen, or you can see the slides coming up after this.
The slide's coming up.
Excuse me.
That's good.
The Pope said there would be no usury, so I just charge a tiny little fee to insure myself from default. My florin has 54 grains of gold and can be exchanged for anything sold just about anywhere across the world. I do well to make a client of the Pope, but vow to never go against his will. When I went on to build my first palazzo or palace, I chose David for the court by Donatello. My David is life-sized, bronze, and naked, hand on hip, with a flowering hat and a smile just breaking.
Mm.
Well, he would often go to the Pope to make sure everything was cool. And one day, I don't know if anyone here has been to Florence. One day he said, "Well, if you want to save your soul and not get in trouble with us, you need to go over to the monks' monastery over there at Saint Marco, and I want you to paint a mural for each one of these guys to go pray in all day long, because they're praying against the dark walls, and that gets depressing. And so let's hire Fra Angelico to go do a bunch of murals." And I'll read 2 of these are images of 2 of the murals in the monastery of Saint Marco. Fra Angelico, cell number 3, it's the one on the left. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Don't be shy or scared of my wings. I have come to plant a seed. Don't pull away. Listen, you will give birth to the greatest being. His return will set us free. You have been chosen to be the mother of God. Open your heart, Mary. You will see that you are bearing the fruit of a great king. Pray for our sinners now and as we plead at the hour of our death and dying. You have no idea how much love you will bring. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Cell 6, the one on the right. I gasped as a gardener walked with a hoe over his shoulder. I almost asked him, "Where did Jesus go?" I found his tomb, but it is empty. You turned around and called out my name. I dropped to my knees in a cool red glow and started to throw up my hands to hug you, but your finger said, "Don't touch me." Your right foot had already stepped forward with a graceful face and a golden halo, fixed with a glowing crucifix inside. You looked back and called out, "Mary," to me. I could tell it was you from all the light.
Mm.
This is actually a etching that's in the Stuart Gardner Museum. I can find it. And this is an etching by Michelangelo, who this was his only love of his own life, of his whole life, Vittoria Colonia. This poem's called Michelangelo to Vittoria Colonia. Those cragged stones in the mountain's hide become smooth sides, strong chests, odd eyes, winged shoes, and the deep songs of gods, saints, and heroes. I set them free with my hammer and my chisel. In a cloud of dust blasted from the quarry, I have already released Apollo, the crucifixion, David. Each of you knows how much blood this costs. Time is breaking faith with me, as you are the first of us to depart. For more than 1,000 years after I die, my love will sing to you through all this stone. He wrote that poem upon her death. The last couple poems I'll read, are about Galileo. Actually, no, I have to read one other. Are about Galileo, who the Medici sponsored. They poured lots of money into this guy. He discovered and created the telescope and discovered all sorts of stuff. Really, major patrons of Botticelli, Michelangelo, Donatello. But at a certain point, these dudes ran out of all their money. And they said, hey, if we can't make money the hard way, let's take political power. And so they basically ran and became popes. Giovanni di Lorenzo de' Medici became a pope, and he was so opulent and blew all their cash, and that he sparked basically Martin Luther to revolt against the church because they weren't being pure to the Bible. And Giovanni didn't know what to do. He had basically made the church go broke, so he came up with this idea that you could come to a priest and pay him to absolve you of all your sins. Giovanni di Lorenzo de' Medici. The Lord is weeping through me, singing, turn the lights of all the sinners back on. Don't miss this once-in-a-lifetime offer. Get your cash, get in line, save your soul. You can buy yourself a ticket or a scroll that will expedite the time it takes to get your sins purged in purgatory. You will be on a fast track to the heavens. The cost depends on the number of your sins. After you purge yourself, we have a special offer for just one night and one night only. You can absolve the sins of all your dead loved ones. The souls in the heavens sing as the coins in the basins ring. So they financed Galileo, and he invents the telescope, starts looking at this, and makes these guys tons of money because their ships now can see other ships and all that kind of stuff. And but he's more interested into science. Earth is the center of the universe. The sun, the moon, and all the planets spin around us in perfect eternity, said Aristotle and Ptolemy. Copernicus, however, said it is we who spin a full revolution every day and travel around the sun each year, the creation of the best artist of them all. But Copernicus only had his books, his naked eye, and a multitude of equations. He so feared the scorn he would face. He spent decades checking his figures. He published his work from his deathbed and was laughed at by a multitude of fools. So Galileo learns that the earth actually does revolve around the sun. And the problem about that is that ain't in the Bible. Index Decree 1616. We have learned of the spread and acceptance of false Pythagorean doctrine, most contrary to Holy Scripture, that the earth moves and the sun does not. To ensure this opinion won't advance to the prejudice of the Catholic Church, such books of heresy and error shall henceforth be condemned and prohibited. We suspend all such books until corrected wherever and in whatever language. Thou shalt not read them. Thou shalt not own them. Thou shalt not print them. Surrender them to your inquisitors at once upon reading this decree. Galileo gets pulled in, and there's a famous trial. This is a painting that Goya did of Galileo at his trial. And this is my hallucination of his last words, although the very last words translated from Latin are, and yet it moves, which is supposedly what he said under his breath at the very end of his testimony. Touching these gospels, I, Galileo, swear I believe in the Catholic Church. I have been suspected of heresy, a suspicion justly conceived of me. I entirely abandon the false doctrine that we are following the sun and the sun doesn't move. The earth is the center of the universe. I curse and detest these said heresies. I swear I will never say or assert anything that will bring further suspicion that I am not a servant of the Lord. If I break any of these promises, I submit to penalty. Eper se mueve, which translates in to and yet it moves. Supposedly underneath his breath at his last moment before he was put into a lifetime of imprisonment, he muttered, and yet it moves. And because they couldn't handle the truth. The last poem I will read is an adaptation of a decree that came from the Catholic Church in Rome. Interestingly, on October 31st, Halloween, 1992, is when the Catholic Church apologized for this entire debacle. In Galileo's time, to depict the world as lacking an absolute point of reverence was inconceivable. And since the cosmos, as then it was known, was contained within the solar system alone, it could only be in the earth or sun. Galileo understood why only the sun could function as the center of the world. The error we theologians made, maintaining the centrality of earth, was to think it was imposed on us by Scripture. The Bible has no concern for the physical world. Use your reason. The Bible only shows you the way. Thanks so much. I put a link to the book and to the literary magazine that I edit. It's an annual. It usually comes out at the end of each year. And the last issue was issue 9. We have a big feature on the late Boston area playwright Ed Bullins. He's known more for his work in New York and California as a playwright in the New Lafayette Theater and then the Minister of Culture for the Black Panthers. But he actually lived in Boston longer than anywhere there, and got a big feature on him in the new issue, in the last issue, and we'll be celebrating our new one at the Grolier Poetry. Amy can't come to that one, although those are all hybrid. On December 20th, we'll have our 10th issue. We're excited to have 10 issues over 10 years. Thanks so much for your time and space, everyone. Look forward to Amy and the rest of you.
Well, Kevin, really appreciated that reading and the wonderful imagery that you read alongside in a kind of aphrasic manner. And it occurred to me that your poetry is kind of like a telescope that brings the past up close, kind of like stars that might have died, but we still get the light from them. So I really appreciate bringing the past to life as you did. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. It's great to do this.
Up next, we have Amy L. Alvarez, who is the author of the poetry collection Makeshift Altar, forthcoming in March of next year, and we'll have to have her back after that. And she's also the co-editor of Essential Voices, a COVID-19 anthology published this year, out now. Selected as one of 2022's Best New Poets, her poetry has appeared in nationally and internationally recognized literary journals, including Plowshares, the Missouri Review, Alaska Quarterly Review, and elsewhere. She has been awarded fellowships from Canto Mundo, Vona, Macondo, VCCA, and the Furious Flower Poetry Center. In 2002, she was inducted as an Afro-Haitian. I knew I would stumble over that.
Appalachian, you're doing great.
Yes. Amy was born in New York City to Jamaican and Puerto Rican parents and currently lives and teaches in West Virginia. Please welcome Amy.
Thanks so much for having me here, Richard. And thank you, Kevin, for that fantastic reading. It actually inspired me to share a little ekphrastic piece of my own. So this is a piece that was put together by, Dr. Ryan McCarthy, who is a doctor here in West Virginia, along with the photographer Molly Humphreys. They have a collective called Healthcare is Human, and I was asked to write a poem for one of the photos that would be on exhibit at the Health Sciences Center at the university. So this is the photo, and the poem I wrote is titled Rest. Of course, these are all photos connected, should probably clarify, to the COVID-19 crisis and to healthcare workers who were striving to make it through during that time. So rest. Exhaustion doubled by crisis. And when I say tired, I'm not talking sleep any longer. I guide souls home. I assist with last moments, but too many are lying face down, struggling for breath. I reflect on a sleep that can save, on a ministry of rest to resist all that plagues us as women, as Black people, nurses, we voices of sanity and science in strange times. I lean on my own self, find whatever peace this glass can offer, and it's smooth, it's cool. I unspool wholly here and offer myself. So I will stop my sharing there because I do not have a full ekphrastic concept, but just wanted to share that one poem. And of course, the anthology that I've put out with some folks who are here right now from PoemWorks is available and is focused on the COVID-19 crisis. So I will start with this poem. It is titled Hibara Negra, which loosely translates to Black Hillbilly. This is how it begins. With my mother born in Spanish Town, with my father born in Ponce. I was born on the island of Manhattan, my umbilical cord buried in a midtown dumpster. We are all island people, even if I sound like a gringa, sound like I am from foreign. I'm a city girl, but my parents taught me to be a jibara, at home on horses, in tents, in el campo, the country, with dirt under my nails from the garden, with my hands curled around a lizard's tail. Another relatively short poem titled Soil. One letter away from soul, and last night I dreamed you and I moved again, bringing all our plants with us, soil from Boston, Morgantown, soil and pots our mothers gave us, mint from New York, lilies from Virginia. We brought our souls to this new place and made it our own, digging down to mycelium, remixing notions of home. There's a great deal of movement in these poems as we kind of go through. I'm going to read a poem titled Appalachia to LGA. I live in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia, and LGA, of course, is the abbreviation for LaGuardia Airport in New York City, which is where I'm originally from. So Appalachia to LGA. Through double plexiglass panes, I trace swirling river inlets, muddy deltas of memory. White smoke flowers up from the mouths of bottom-heavy smokestacks. In West Virginia, by God, I feel the boundary of dense green woodland, willowy fingers on my gasping throat. But I am not of these mountains. I'm from Queens concrete, endless signs written in every alphabet, from subway cars and the women therein who weep without sound, who hold on to yellow grocery bags while the 7 train screeches along track's edge. I trace a path back to my mother and her mother, one purging her life of detritus, old LPs, books she will not read, an unbearable husband, and the other's urge to hang on to it all. Her hoard of VHS tapes featuring nations she will never see for fear of flying, forming a wild topography in her hallway. I trace the line back from Flushing and Laurelton out to that first Jamaica, sunken redbirds snaking an undersea railway, stretching from Queens to Plantation Heat in Kingston and St. Anne's Parish, out to an avenue named for my French Catholic forefather, who crossed himself after coming in my Yoruba foremother. I dare myself to return, to want this return. Cloud quiver above ocean reef, skirting the continent of what is. I have a few Queens-related poems, that being where I am from. Any version of home I might own. And I believe I said the title Queensboro. I'm just double checking on myself here. The Queensboro is the title of this poem. Any version of home I might own begins not in a room, but the backyard where I first learned the names of flowers: iris, forsythia, lily. The house was white with a clay tile roof. I earned my scars falling out of its crabapple tree, driveway tumbles on roller skates. My grandmother wasn't allowed in the house, but I remember watching her walk up and down the sidewalk on a summer day, full of her own mad woman power. I went outside to speak with her. I remember she gave me a stick of mint gum, that her makeup was melting in the heat. I'm sure she had on the same purple dress she wore when my parents married. Purple is the color of mourning, she told my mother on her wedding day, as my father's Boricua family celebrated. I mourn your terrible mistake. Any version of home must begin from the outside in, from the Caribbean to New York, from the melanin in my skin to my heart muscle pumping in patois, Spanglish, in all the Englishes I have inherited, my colonized tongue perched in the eaves of my mouth. This next poem is titled Boondocks. It is focused on the history of the Philippines in some ways. Its focus is colonialization. It looks at the experiences of trans people throughout the world, but it's kind of started with an obsession around the word boondocks and its origin. And the original word is actually from the Philippines. And so that's kind of where the poem began. Boondocks. From the Tagalog bundok and Cebuano bukid, each meaning mountain, rurality, folded up land far from ocean, from Proto-Austronesian bundok, higher ground. When American soldiers menaced the Philippines after the nation declared independence from Spain, Filipinos used bundok as cover, descending on an army used to prairies, to brown faces protecting sacred ground, raging across open field instead of behind trees, raining fire down the bundoks. These soldiers birthed the bastard word boondocks in these mountains, migrating meaning toward remote country, hinterlands, where the people, in their estimation, and what really is the estimation of a 19-year-old American worth, were less civilized or civil. I imagined a boondock being a watery wasteland and didn't expect it to mean mountain in my stepfather's first tongue, or in Cebuano, Cebu being part of the archipelago I know well from my time with church folk who proselytized to the choir, molding Protestants of Catholics, but also running clinics, providing materials to teachers, inviting young trans women to hang out, delight, and sisterly love. I met my first out trans friend in Cebu at 15. She taught me the Cebuano word for cockroach as a gag, ok-ok. Bakla is Cebuano for gay man and trans woman. Bakla, bukid, beauty, bundok. Jennifer Laud was a bakla, Filipina beauty murdered by an American Marine in a bathroom stall because his own desire was distasteful to him. He could not understand the forests of her bundoks. The murderer was released after 5 years of a 10-year sentence. I don't bother naming the man from the American boondocks because names are themselves honorifics, had air conditioning in his cell, was paid $250,000 while he twiddled the thumbs that held Jennifer's head in a toilet. The US military remained in the Philippines in exchange for COVID vaccines. Baybaylan, from the Austronesian baylayan, a word for shaman from the pre-colonial Philippines. A baybaylan was almost always a woman like Jennifer, shamans by their very nature, guided by spirits of ancestors who brought them back to their bodies after traveling to astral boondocks, until colonizers drove them into the mountains. I wish a medium beyond words to guide Jennifer back to her body. I wish an army of bakla baybaylan, beautiful, fearless, thundering down the boondocks, fire streaming from their painted lips. So from here, I'll move into a poem. I think Richard said this earlier, a poem of mourning. This really is a time of international mourning as we look at wars happening on multiple fronts, and various factions kind of tearing at the fabric of our own democracy. This is a very personal poem of mourning, however, but it does start to expand out into the very universal. It's titled Hadeology. Hadeology is actually the study of the planet Pluto. Pluto, of course, being the god of death, but it also kind of ties in these strange ideas about studying death or studying mourning as I look at this poem. This was published in Plowshares a little while ago. It was an edition that was focused on mourning, specifically Ukraine, that was edited by Ilya Kaminsky. So hadeology. Gravity is the weakest force, but it can bring a body down. An adjunct professor on concrete outside a church, a hood entrepreneur on concrete outside a 3-story walk-up, a schizophrenic son on concrete outside his mother's apartment, a recent high school grad on a bathroom floor, a biking single mother in an 18-wheeler, a college student and his father. Trillium, cornflower, aster, honeysuckle, poinsettia, wild cane. We are electrons bound by nuclear pull, magnetism. We spin out of orbit and are pulled back 1,000 times a day. I only learned today what makes a glass of water grow stale overnight. The obvious dissolved gases, the strange, the presence of geosmin, molecule that scents Earth after rain. As the former outermost planet, Pluto once had my complete affection, but things change. Casey Goodson Jr. did not get to inspect his newly cleansed smile upon returning home. A good son, he carried a bag of sandwiches. Last year, a woman I know taught me a Turkish recipe for the purslane held in my front yard. This year, the purslane did not return. Instead, another woman told me how to make tea from the rosemary growing rampant, because something always springs back. Gravity is fickle, after all. I should probably just check in that everyone can hear me. I was hearing a little bit of feedback earlier. Okay. This next poem is a poem that started in France, and for PoemWorks folks who are here, this was one of the last trips led by our Barbara in 2016, and it started with an exercise on a boat where we needed to write about a memory that we had out on a boat. And I wrote about my first time fishing, which was very strangely when I was doing a research project in Brazil, and I went piranha fishing. And so this poem exploded and became the strange thing that it is now over time. It's called Predatory Rights. In this poem, the speaker captures a silver piranha on a bamboo fishing pole using raw meat as bait. In this poem, the fish is a metaphor for the poet's mother, for the poet herself. The fish is Elizabeth. The bait is a metaphor for capitalism. You are a metaphor for capitalism. The fish bleeds as it emerges from the river. It is the first time the speaker has caught a fish. She wonders who will taste whom. The poet's teeth, the piranha's teeth, metaphors for salt in a pre-existing wound. The speaker watches the river guide pull up a water hyacinth stem, as thick and fleshy as a human thumb. Wiggle it between the dying fish's needle teeth. In this poem, you are fish and water hyacinth. In this poem, you are hinge, piranha's jaw. You bite clean through. And I'll end with this poem titled Street Corner Market. It's a poem about strange kinds of sisterhood that happen. And I guess I dedicate this to my poetry sisters who are here tonight, who I met through PoemWorks, and obviously to everyone and to the guys too. But this poem is kind of about found strange sisterhood that happened randomly on a market on a corner in Philadelphia. It's titled Street Corner Market. I spot the gold fruit piled high in green paper baskets. Can't help the ooh that comes as I reach toward them. The moo-mooed woman who stands in front of me turns, saying, "The smell brings me back to Virginia." High yellow, plum round, she tells me fields her granddaddy owned, sold, meadows she girled through. We talk counties, Carolina, Henrico. We talk tobacco and sunflower seed. We speak of what hung in those orchards. Though I've only known that land through car windows on visits to kin, and my orchards were city parks, mulberries fermenting on concrete. Something in me understands the honey of child in field. She says, "I was home today watching TV and craving some sweet, some fresh, you know?" We dare one another to bite into our bounty before parting. Our teeth score skin, juices race rivulets toward elbows. We give ourselves over to sweet. Thank you all so much.
Wow.
Wow is right. Wow. Two professors reading to us tonight about ancient history made present and present history made present. Really wonderful, wonderful, such fluency, really. Remarkable. Thank you so much. Well, I have canvassed the room, and I think we have our 6th poet lineup for the open mic. I'm going to start out with another historian, the poet Clara Silverstein. Please welcome Clara.
Thank you. And thank you for such a great reading, both of you. And also, of course, how you handled history was of great interest to me. I also want to thank Richard for bringing us all together month after month. It's a great series. I recently heard the very welcome news that my poetry manuscript is going to be published by Finishing Line Press. So instead of reading a poem about history, I'm actually going to read the first poem in the collection. It's called Tourist in My Hometown. When my mother puts my childhood home in Richmond on the market, I return to Ronder the lawn, magnolia blossoms littered like crushed coffee cups, at the apartments under construction, in weeds near the Esso station, where my best friend and I wriggled under the chain link fence after men left for the day, tiptoed up plywood stairs to framed rooms where we fingered idle drills, table saws, nail guns, blew smoke rings out roughed-in windows, spied on everything we would leave at the houses below, the wire weave of porch screens, sieving the glow of television families, sparring and guffawing. Everything we wanted in the humming edges where the floodlights died away.
Wow. Thank you, Clara. Up next, we have Kathy Whitham.
There we go. I was just about to unmute when my little box jumped down into the thing. All right. Hello, everyone. So I was looking through my poems, trying to think of what to read, and in line with this time, I think my choice is to read a very life-affirming poem in the midst of all the death that's going on. It's called To Say Yes. And shall the full weight of your yes embrace you, buoy you, melt into you like warm butter on an English muffin while your greasy chin smiles? And have your unmatched threads and rough edges become the compost for tomatoes succulent and ripe in the long light? And will you inhale every moment of that light, even as the days shorten and the comb fills like the rising flame of your yes? For Maria and Paul on their wedding day.
Gorgeous. Wow, thank you. We needed that.
Yeah.
And now, please welcome Steve Nickman.
Thanks, Richard. And great reading. And Kevin, what a wonderful indulgence you treated us to into the Renaissance. And Amy, que jíbara verdadera. This poem is my first poem about my day job. And if you know the game Jenga, you might recognize the shape. A child visits my office for the first time. I greet you by name, show you a chair. You sit down cautiously. I see myself through your eyes. A short grown-up with glasses, a lined face, shelves and shelves of books, a tower of wooden blocks on a table between the chairs. I know Jenga. I'll build it higher, won't make it fall. I turn to the tower, tap a block, pull it out slowly, place it on top. I glance at you over my glasses. Wait. You reach forward, choose a block, push carefully, extract it, position it next to mine. Sometime we'll talk.
Wow, that is great. Love the last line. And now here is Margot Wizansky.
Hi, everyone. That was a wonderful reading from both of you. I loved it. So I was going to read something, but I decided to look for a Vesperish poem. And this is from my book, my first full-length book of poetry that was just published. And I'm having a book launch on October 22nd in Brookline. Exaltation. Every day, the rapture of birds, sunset approaching in red velvet shoes, leaving prints where the sky touches water, that radiance reflecting on the sea's flatness. Dark blue-violet streaks I want to plunge my face into. Improbable red blazes on the west side of every tree, fades to dusk, the ordinary story of night beginning. And soon the moon, the shiver of stars. Once in Oxford, I heard the Magdalen College boy choir, the only time I felt exaltation in a chapel. Those ruby bright, unbroken voices praising, no matter who they praised, their clear madrigals soaring past a multitude of polychrome saints, scaling the Gothic arches to a place I'd never been, a place where I might fly.
Very heartwarming. Thank you so much, Mark. Up next, Jonathan Aibel.
Yeah, Richard, thank you again for organizing such a wonderful evening. It's really great to hear the poets. The open mic is particularly fine, and I hope I add to it. I was inspired to pick this as it's one of my more recent ekphrastic poems. It's after a black and white print by Delilah Montoya called, well, part of a series, After Desire Lines, Boba Quieri Peak, Arizona, 2004. And the poem's called Desert Blooms. The long walk, hot, dry, the broken, light, the gray sky serrated by mountain ridges, darker gray clouds holding their treasure, the land, the Tohono O'odham who live there, the imaginary borders that cross it, the saguaro, sage, hola, desert willow, the soil ungenerous, not unloving, the strange tongues, the lack of death threats, kidnapped children, the difficult crossing, the man in a white shirt walking to the edge, the empty wheelbarrow, the scrape under the brush, bright 1-gallon plastic jugs of water.
Wow. The difficult journey of life. Thank you, Jonathan. That was our penultimate poet. Our ultimate poet tonight is Lisa Kwang.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm tuning in from my phone, and I had to pull up a poem up on the computer on my desktop, because I don't have a copy of my book with me at the moment. So my name is Lisa Kwang. I identify as Appalachian, an Asian from Appalachia, and I'm also an Appalachian poet. Amy and I were actually inducted together. I'm going to read the opening poem from my first chapbook, Becoming Appalachian, which was published in 2022 by Glassfire Press. On the 42nd anniversary of my father's swim from China, October 17th, 2015. Suspended between shores, you watch your friends tire, disappear beneath bluish black waters, never to resurface. When you agreed to swim together, you promised to keep going, even if some could not go on. Someone must reach the shore of freedom. This journey must not be in vain. You keep swimming, your family's voices echoing from the home you left, your son and daughter's faces etched on clouds. Your limbs grow heavier after the first hour. You keep time by the shifting sky, one arm, one leg moving after the other, strong strokes slicing cold Taiping Bay. Salt slides from your eyelashes, the sun is a blinking siren. Spotting a shark fin in the distance, you quiet your strokes, your eyes still on Hong Kong. Even the fear of being eaten alive can't stop you. You want to live to see your babies grow up, to grow old with your wife. You can't fail as a man, as the head of your family. You keep swimming, believe your blood father is watching, the father you never knew. You must keep swimming to rewrite history. His early death won't be yours. You will live even though your legs feel like sacks of rice. You believe there is something stronger than exhaustion. This is why you continue to kick towards freedom. This is why you won't stop until your feet touch shallow ground again. This is love spanning generations of blood, red legacies that will survive shark bites, the ghosts of family secrets. You must keep swimming to reach the shore where you will be reborn, a tiger emerging. Thank you.
Let's everyone unmute and give a round of applause to all of our poets, open mic and the wonderful two features. It's really been a trip around the world. You know, we start from the nuclear family and it just ripples out like a family tree, like humanity itself. And wow, this has been an amazing evening. Does anyone have any thing they want to share with any of the poets tonight? as we wrap things up.
Fantastic. Congratulations, Clara. Happy for
Thank
you.
you.
to get your book taken. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful reading. Oh my goodness. I'm over the moon. It was so wonderful. Anyways, thank you, Rich. You always do such a nice job with the PoemWorks reading. I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Let me mention that we're going to go back to our usual first Friday of the month with November and December and onward. This was a bit of an aberration because the first Friday of October, I was with people I hadn't seen in 50 years, otherwise known as a high school reunion. So I couldn't miss that, you know. And I thank our readers for their flexibility in coming on a Thursday.
Of course. Thank you so much, Richard. This was really, really wonderful. And Kevin, it was wonderful to hear your work.
Echo, both of you folks and all the great readers.
Yes.
Thanks for being an audience. No, we don't write these things for ourselves, do we all? Right? So it's great wherever we are, wherever you are.
And thank you. This was a helpful gathering in a week like this, just to really see and hear art. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for reading, all the friends who read and get to hear read sometimes. So beautiful.